Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this, our first in our new series of webinars about the value and importance of strategy in social media. And we'll start the slides running now, and I'll introduce the speakers to you. If we can go on to the slide with the speakers, thank you. So I'm Mark Baines. I'm a chartered marketer. I run Marcom, and I'm heavily involved in digital marketing in all its aspects. Then you'll see Ben Powell, who's a specialist in digital marketing.
Hi, everyone.
Looks after it all for us. And Gil, who is deep inside the bowels of LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and anything else you care to mention, and knows how they work and specializes in making them work for you. What we'll be talking about today is giving you just a brief overview of social media and how they're used. More to the point, why you might want to use them for your business. And Gil and Ben will be telling you exactly how you can use them. And then we'll be talking about how you can evaluate your the effectiveness of the work that you've been doing on them. So our objectives today are, firstly, if we can have the slide up, what is the value of social media to your organization, so that you understand what the value is and therefore what resources to put to it and how much of your time to put into it. And also we want to work out how you can make it work for you. Your takeaway, your outcome would be a clear understanding of social media, its role in your marketing communication strategy, and a clear understanding of why you should be doing it. And also, perhaps more importantly, how to do it to best effect, because there's a lot of mystery surrounding it. And as you can see, why bother with social media? Well, there is a perception that it's a waste of company time. In fact, certainly until recently, and I think it's probably changing now very quickly, but there used to be a rule that people couldn't use Facebook during company time. They couldn't go on LinkedIn. I think a lot of bosses were very concerned about their executives going on LinkedIn because it was essentially a recruitment marketplace. And they just see it as saw it as a waste of everybody's time because it's trivial, it's chit chat, and it's for you and your mates, and how could it possibly be of any value to the company? The reality is actually quite different, and actually that is changing fast anyway. So the reality, if we can move on the slide, please, is that it does provide a route to market for you. And that is becoming more and more apparent with social distancing and lockdown, which will obviously continue for quite a while to come. So everybody has to take it seriously now. And why does it work? The reality is that it works because it creates an ongoing dialogue between you and your customers, clients, stakeholders of all sorts. This is particularly important if you have infrequent purchase cycles. So if you're selling a high value capital item, some CapEx products such as software or some items of engineering and so on, you've got an infrequent purchase cycle. What happens in between those purchase periods? So let's say you update your software every 2 or 3 years, and how do you know what's going on in the marketplace? If you're a vendor of software, how do you know that your market is listening to you? And you can warm them up by maintaining that contact in between the purchase cycles, by having an engagement with your customers, and ensuring that they know you and they don't forget you, so that when they are ready to purchase, you're front of mind. And I think a good point to make at this stage is that it's not about promotions, it's more about engagement. So traditionally, advertising, as it used to be known, was all about broadcasting your benefits to the marketplace. Social media is not about that. Social media is about engaging with the marketplace so that you are seen in a certain light. And the normal way to approach it is to set yourself up as a thought leader or influencer by being useful to your marketplace through offering expert insight, comment, industry comment, and articles, opinions that are of interest if you are active in a particular industry. So you can build your brand. So I'm now going to pass over to my colleague. I think, Gil, you're picking this up, are you?
Yeah, that's right. So just before we start, I also wanted to introduce you to the Q&A button on Zoom on the bottom or on the top of your screen. It depends on which device you're using. So if you have any questions for Mark, myself, or Ben, just feel free to type them in the Q&A section or send us a direct message on the chat. And towards the end of the presentation, we'll leave enough time to answer any questions you may have. So it's a great way for you guys to ask anything about the presentation or anything, or engage with us or on any other topics in relation to social media and your business. And this slide is basically to explain to you guys or demonstrate what is the process or what is the pathways that we recommend for strategic social media. It can be small scale or it can be large scale. So whether you're organizing a huge 3-year-long campaign to promote your business on social media, or whether it's just a one-off event that you're organizing that you'd like to increase the attention, all this include 3 pretty simple steps. So the first one is planning. You need to spend quite a lot of time kind of considering and planning in advance what's your goals of your campaign and how you're going to do it. It's very important not to miss any parts, and also have all the different sections you need before you start on the next step, which is the implementation. So that will be talking about how to implement your social media strategy. And then the first and the third step is about evaluating. So in this webinar today, we will give you a brief overview on each one of these steps and what kind of more theoretical kind of concepts and what we recommend for you to do. And in the follow webinars in the series, which will happen every 2 weeks on a Thursday, we will be touching base on each one of these in more details, provide tips, and show you how we use this cycle in our kind of day-to-day work.
So today we're kind of telling you why to do it and giving you an overview. And then in the next few webinars, we'll be talking about how to do it and how to get the best from it.
Mark, I think you were going to take us through inbound marketing briefly and just explain the correlation with social media. So
a buzzword that you'll all be familiar with, I'm sure, these days is inbound marketing. Didn't really exist a few years ago, but it's become more and more relevant, and is especially relevant now with lockdown, people working from home. It's all about encouraging people to visit you, to get to know you, to actively approach you and come to your door to visit your website, ideally. It's about building your brand, and it's about driving sales. And that's what you're trying to achieve. There are lots and lots of ways of doing it. And we'll talk about the funnel in a minute, but there's a lot you can do, which in a broad sense, which involves social media, and it's all about drawing people in. And then as you narrow it down, you get further down the funnel. You get into your website, your different resources, your newsletters, your videos, your social media, which we're specifically talking about. So it really works like everything pulling people towards you rather than trying to push people into your direction. You're attracting them and encouraging them to engage with you in one way or another. So I pass over to Ben now.
Thanks, Mark. As Mark just said, the inbound marketing really helps to accommodate or affords a place for all of our lots of different entry points for our audience. And we're talking about social media specifically in this case. So this is our social media sales funnel. There are many funnels like it, but this is the social media one. And also these funnels will look different for every company. There'll be a different approach that every company will take, depending on their strategy, depending on their offering, depending on the type of content that they share and their communications. Lots of people see social media just as sort of frontline of communications with their customers or prospective audiences, but actually there are many, many points within the social sphere where people can convert their audience into customers and do direct selling as well. So it's a very important marketplace actually, as well as just the sort of communications glue that holds it all together. So this funnel really depicts the various types of content and its potential entry points into the funnel. At every point and every entry point, we would expect there to be a conversion point as well to be planned. And what's a conversion point? Well, conversion point really is, what do we want our prospective audience, what do we want our intended audience to do at the point at which they meet the funnel, they greet the funnel. Ideally, we will convert them into customers, or we'll convert them into a subscriber for our newsletter, or we'll convert them into an advocate for our product or our business. We'll convert them into a follower to our social media page. So many, many different types of conversions, and different pieces of content will have a different thrust for that. All they're showing all the same thing, but the strategy beneath it all really is to ensure that, as we can see, as we move down the funnel, we're accommodating that audience every step of the way at whatever point at which they reach us. Maybe they're an existing audience, part of an existing client database. And we can see at the bottom of the funnel there, we've got some of our more sort of premium corporate assets, such as our company website. Close by is a sales product or landing page, so it may be very sort of a hard-working destination that intends to convert our audience directly into a customer. And likewise, we have our articles or blog posts that will be working hard for us in another way and presenting us as thought leaders to our industry, or giving company updates. And then at the top of the funnel, leading down into that, you've got all, many of the sort of broadcast medias, including social media. So news or press releases, email broadcasts, or maybe it's other forms of rich media, such as a video or a podcast. But the point is that they all form part of a singular strategy.
I think it's true to say that what you're seeing here is a generic funnel, and everybody's funnel will be different. And it depends really on what your strategy is, and it will reflect that. So you'll have different aspects of your social media feeding in, and of your campaigns feeding in. And so you will end up with a different sales funnel. And it's quite a nice way of visualizing what you're doing. And if you need to sell your strategy within your organization, it actually helps people to visualize it and to see it without having to sit through a long talk about what you're doing and why you're doing it. You can show them a slide like this and they get it straight away.
That's it, yeah. And I think it leads well onto our next part, which is all about planning when it comes to strategy, and it's a key part of it. And it's important to have a key team around planning. Everyone loves a useless acronym. Poor planning permits persistent problems, people, or 6 Ps. It's a bit of fun, really, but the point is that you get your planning right, and everything else should work well, or at least well within the limitations of your project as it exists. We're going to talk somewhat about evaluating your campaign work and recycling into back to the planning process for every campaign that you run. But that's an important process too. But at the moment, we're looking at planning. So we need to evaluate our position at the outset. What currently works well for you? What doesn't? Who is your audience? You know, who is your current audience? Your prospective audience? You know, what in the way of your communications works well for you in terms of either engagement? What works well for you in terms of driving sales, for instance? So it's very important that you have a baseline to work from as the bedrock of your strategy.
And you can get some of this by looking at your competitors, seeing what they're doing. And if they're doing it, presumably it works for them. So why not crib a bit of that for yourselves?
Absolutely, yeah. Competitive analysis, really important. It may be that you know, some of that work will help inform how you set your objectives, which is our next point, including our KPIs, or key performance indicators. What are the business goals and the growth measures that fall in line with those? These two are really important. It's all connected. You can't get away with a social media strategy without considering your sales strategy, your marketing strategy, your communication strategy. They should all, in terms of brand cognizance, hang together and relate to one another and work with cohesion. And I would say that's as important for a small company as it is for a large corporate that needs to work hard at bringing all of those arms of its business together.
Yeah, if you don't set up KPIs at the beginning, you just don't know how you're doing, and you don't know if it's worth it. And so you're either going to love it and carry on, or you're going to hate it and drop it. Either way, it's slightly out of control. So with KPIs, it enables you to control what you're doing and ensure that your activities are on target.
One more point about evaluating your position. I think it's very important in the planning stage for companies and businesses to decide, just to consider the different social media platforms available to them. I think there's a lot of pressure for companies to have social media present in all the platforms available. So to have it on LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. But some of these social media platforms may not be suited for your business. So it's very important in the planning stage and evaluating your position is to make this distinction and decide which platforms you're going to attack and which platforms are going to be your friends, rather than just including everything and spending valuable times on networks that might not be beneficial for your business.
Yeah, it's the same as if you were doing offline marketing. You would highlight the publications that would suit you best. You're not going to bother advertising in places that don't suit your business.
Yeah.
So campaign design and planning, determining the long-term broadcast plan aligned with your marketing goals. So that's exactly what we alluded to before. The social media broadly focuses on your communications in most cases, though we are effectively strategizing a campaign plan for marketing material. So in terms of your overarching business goals and your longer term objectives, then it needs to align with your marketing intention. So that's important when it comes to actually preparing your material, designing your material, planning your media. All of this requires a certain amount of headroom and some lead time to get right. So it has to be considered in advance. And that ties in neatly with scheduling. So lots of tools available. We've at Marcom made some nice custom tools for our clients to use when it comes to campaign planning. And there are lots out there. Your company may even use one already, or perhaps you have one to hand, but you don't make use of it yet. But the point is that scheduling is really important, as I said, especially for planning your work ahead, rather than being reactive. Every company needs to be proactive and responsive in equal measure. So But what we don't want to be doing is putting ourselves under lots of pressure such that we don't meet our marketing goals.
Absolutely. I agree with that point, Ben, massively. I think a lot of people get carried away and just spend too much time on social media because they're reactive, instead of having a strategy in advance and schedule all the content in advance. And that will free you to the most important bits and sections of your business rather than just refreshing and posting all day on social media.
On the other hand, you still need to spend time on it, because the real value comes when you start engaging with people. So if you put a post out and then somebody comments, you really want to be able to reply to their comment and keep the conversation going, and not just drop it. So you do need to spend some time on it nevertheless.
Yeah, absolutely. So engagement is the important time to spend, but scheduling and posting and doing kind of the work of uploading the pictures and putting the right hashtags and putting the right links, that takes a lot of time. And you're right, Mark, engagement should be the priority once you start implement your project. I
think the best campaigns that I've seen, or the best approaches, really make it look effortless. It's sleight of hand in many ways. The actual doing, the communications, the engagement, it's all a really well thought out part of the process, and it all comes down to the planning process and the strategic planning process. Evaluation and engagement also feed directly back into the strategic process. So you're giving your strategy, which is what we're focusing on today, time to breathe and time to evolve. So implementation, which is really time to make it happen. This is what we're going to do. This is when we're going to do it. This is what we're going to share. This is the content we're going to prepare. But firstly, we need to dress for the occasion. We need to prepare all our brand, properties, channels, online assets consistently, coherently across all the channels. And again, this is as important for a small company as it is for a business. It's brand awareness 101, really. What this does is send out a strong subliminal message to all your audience, especially those that go to seek you out across channels, about the trust that you provide to them in the way that you deal with your business, and how you tackle your business, and how you go about managing your relationships with your clients. It's very important. And it's more than just, the colouring in department. It's more than just cut and paste this and that. You've got to have this consideration about coherency across your brand and your brand assets. Content generation is obviously a key part of this. It's the meat of the project. It's going to take up a lot of your time and consideration. You need the right tools and support. Again, building your campaign materials and media. You need to ensure that you set yourself a benchmark in terms of the quality of that material as high as you possibly can, such that you are, really pushing the limits to what your to the quality, the level of the quality that you're putting out there as a brand. We've already done lots of work in our previous webinar series on SEO and building content, and the importance of a high quality over quantity, and that should always be at the forefront of any strategy team who are looking to build these materials into their campaigns. But we also need to determine the conversion goals of that content. What do we want our audience to do? We've mentioned already on our front sales funnel diagram. We need to be ensuring that the content has clear calls to action, that we know exactly what we want the audience to do when they meet that content, give them all the opportunities they need to visit other content if they are what we call, what we might consider to be a sort of a floating customer. We want to be able to, afford them all the opportunities that they need to make a decision to get in touch with us, make an inquiry, pick up the phone, send an email, whatever it might be. So those are our conversion goals. Publishing and promotion. This is really the kind of sharp end of the campaign. This is where we are considering exactly what we want our customers to hear from us, what we want their experience to be, what we want our tone of voice to be as a company. How do we want to speak as a brand? How do we speak as one, as a brand and as a team? We need to think about, should there be any guidelines for sharing content? Do our colleagues need to have particular roles in that process, particular permissions? Do they need to have do's and don'ts of how and what to say and when confronted with, say, a difficult response, or maybe just a normal piece of engagement? Who's going to be the one to tackle that? How are they going to say it? All really important things and an important part of the planning process.
Sometimes people work in a regulated industry, in which case then you do need to have clear guidelines so that people don't upset the regulators.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, compliance issues often a problem. And finally, consider which campaigns might require paid promotions. So it goes without saying, there's lots of opportunities for you to sponsor your content, promote your content, whether it's via pay-per-click or through social media advertising. You've got some very, very powerful tools there for reaching a very focused audience, and for improving the visibility and the success of your campaigns. Absolutely worth thinking about. Not always correct for every piece of content, but if you have a sales landing page that is the linchpin of your marketing campaign and is the focal point for your audience, then every reason to give it a boost and lend it some paid media. And Gil, maybe you'd like to take this part of engagement, because it leads on to your next slide about evaluation quite well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think engagement should be bold and bigger than all the other slides. Really, you can have high quality content published on all the social media. And if no one likes it, no one comments it, no one clicks on the links, no one else would see it. And what happens in the past, social media, in the past, I guess about 5 years ago, 3 to 5 years ago, when people would put a post up, if you were online at the same time, you would see it. So you'll be chronological. What happened is that Facebook and LinkedIn and all the social medias have advanced a bit, and they created an algorithm that then based, and then they decided that they only want to show high quality content to their viewers. And the way they assess if content is high quality for their viewers and for their users is whether it's got a high engagement rate. And I think engagement is very important. So we encourage our clients, whether they have a small company of a few employees or whether they have a larger companies, to use that number of employees and trying to increase the engagement of their posts as much as possible. And I think in general, in terms of implementing your social media practice, many customers ask us about how much to post on social medias, or how much posts they need to do. Is it twice a day? Is it once a week? Is it 3 times a week? And we always say to them that the quality is what's most important. As been mentioned before, if the post isn't good and no one would like it, or no one will reply to it, no one will comment to it, then there's no point sending this post out. So it's very important to consider when you're about to post any new or schedule any new content, to think, is this post is going to be interesting? Would people then like this? Is this relevant to my audience? And if it is, then go ahead and schedule it and include it as part of your campaign. But if it's not, just save the time and use it to work on better content.
Yeah, because it will actively work against you, in fact, won't it?
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, it's a challenging one, isn't it, to get the balance right between, because there's some companies, I think, that are so afraid about what they share and do that sometimes forces them into inactivity. But
yeah, that's true.
The quality's got to be there. But I think it'll be in webinar 3, which tackles implementation. We'll share some examples of good quality social media communications and some case studies. Gil, evaluation.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is also a key part of this cycle. You need to be able to evaluate the results of your project and also on the go, figuring out whether the project is on track. So the first tool that you need to set up, and you could be even set up in the planning stage, is the monitoring or the data collection of the information. So you need to know, as Ben's mentioned earlier, in the beginning, how many followers you have, what is your engagement rate, what are the different metrics that make this campaign, the targets or the objectives of the campaign. But you need to continue on and monitor this information throughout. So then you know if the campaign is effective. The second stage would be analyzing this content.
We're also listening to our engagement, aren't we, as well? When we talk about social listening, we're listening to what's happening with our audience, what's happening with our customers. What do they have to say? Where can we afford them points of feedback? It might be that we're also listening to our competitors as well and seeing what they're saying. So monitoring covers a big aspect of this process.
Yeah, absolutely. And then use the data that you have and create some key, easy to read matrix or data points that will assist you with viewing the status of your campaign. The most basic kind of concept is engagement rate, rates, as Ben mentioned, to see every post that you send out, what is the engagement rate? And if you want to know the calculation or what's the right way to evaluate this engagement rate, just Google engagement rate on Google and you'll find many, many different calculations to help you with that. But it's very important to have these dashboards or these rates to know what's happening throughout your campaign. And then, as Ben mentioned earlier with the funnel, conversions are also a very key tool to find out whether your campaign is effective. And you can do it offline, but there's also many online processes and setups that you can set to combine your social media post with your website or with your sales kind of tools that you have. And then review the performance. So this is towards the end of your campaign, finding out whether you reached your KPIs. What did you do right? What did you do wrong? What should you change? And then set up targets for your next campaign.
Yeah, remember KPIs are slightly backward looking in that you're really assessing what you've been achieving up to date. And you need targets really to follow in order to ensure that your KPIs are meaningful.
Absolutely. And then responding to the campaign. So you would have the big circle of the planning, executing or implementation, and then the evaluation. But also you'll find many smaller circles throughout this campaign to find out maybe a little circle for each one or a little process of each one of the posts. So you can kind of find out whether the post was right. What do you need to tweak in your next post? Whether if the engagement was high on a specific post, learn from it and find out how you can improve it on later down that campaign. But then when you go around and kind of summarize it all, you need to start thinking about what's the next campaign and draw bigger kind of conclusion from an average of all your different kind of data points that you gathered throughout.
Yeah, like all marketing communications activities, it's a test. The saying is test, test, and test again, and it's a continuous process. You'll never reach a state of equanimity because the market's always changing, your competitors are always changing, everything's changing all the time. So you just need to keep on testing and testing, and if it works, do it more. If it doesn't work, drop it, try something else. Test something else.
What would we say to companies that are kind of reluctant to adopt social media as a strategy? Many companies will say, "Well, there's no indication that it'll work for me. It hasn't done in the past, and it's too difficult. There's too much effort involved in not only producing the content, but now you're telling me that I've got to go and analyze every step that I take, and there's all this planning and strategic work to go into it as well." What do you think would be our response to that?
Well, I think you're asking me this.
We can share.
I didn't want to throw you a googly, but yeah, either one of you, I think.
Yeah. Well,
I'll conclude.
My response is always that you have to work to a plan, and most people are on social media in some form or another. Professionals are pretty much all on LinkedIn. Private people in their private capacity, those same people often will be on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, and they'll be using it. And you can't separate your personal use from your business use, really, because they play into each other. And so you have to have a strategy there, because if you don't, then you're just sending out random messages, sort of censored, unmonitored, unthought about, and your brand will suffer accordingly. If you're able to ensure that everybody in your organization knows what the strategy is, assuming you've set one up, knows what the strategy is and understands what they should be saying, how, why, and what it will achieve or not achieve, then immediately they're singing from the same hymn sheet, and you'll have a much more effective synergy, if you like, between all the social media efforts of the people in your company or organization.
Yeah, I'm in danger of answering my own question here a little bit, but I think as well it's no longer the case that social media is the next big frontier, is it? It's the future is here. We are using social media now in a very commonplace way, and all markets are recognizing it as such. So I don't think it's really the case that companies can just
frankly,
social media anymore.
Yeah, frankly, it's been here for the last 10 years. But one of the reasons why it hasn't particularly taken off in the past is because, dare I say it, the average age of the more senior executives tends to be above that of the early adopters of social media. And so they've rather viewed it with a cynical eye and thought it's just a waste of everybody's time and it's frippery.
There's a lack of good strategy as well. So there you go.
Going with a strategy and suddenly they listen. And it's all changed now anyway, with lockdown and social distancing and so forth. Social media has become the natural fallback for everybody doing business.
Yeah. Okay, upcoming.
Okay, so we'd like to draw your attention now then to what we're talking about in the next few weeks. We're going to go much deeper into these subjects. On the Thursday, the 21st of May, these are all on Thursdays at 3:00, how to plan your social content strategy. So we'll be going into that in much more depth. On the 4th of June, which is 2 weeks after that, how to implement your content strategy in social media. And 2 weeks after that, on the 18th of June, how to evaluate the effectiveness of your social media marketing. Those are the steps that we showed in our virtuous circle, if you like, the little diagram that went round. And I would strongly recommend that you register for these now. There will be on Zoom a method of registering after this webinar.
Yeah, I believe anyone who's registered today will receive notification, but if anyone would like their colleagues to join, then please share a link to either from our social media post or to the link to the page on our website to register.
Yeah, and one thing that we've been planning, that today's webinar would be more of an overview of the process, but we will try to include on the next webinars as many practical tools to really kind of help you practically plan those the different steps on your strategy.
Yeah, and I think many of our listeners will be active in these areas already and doing these things already, so you will have an idea of how to go about it, but probably it's something that you've picked up kind of off the street, so to speak, through your own personal experience and talking to others. We'll give you the actual right and wrong and how to about these things, so that you'll either have confirmation that you are doing the right thing, or you will have a way of learning new ways of doing it.
All right, brilliant. So we invite you now to go down and click on the Q&A button and send us any questions you have about the webinar, about the process, or any social media related questions and strategy. We have already a few questions that were put up throughout, so we'll start with the first one. So we had one question, Mark, perhaps. How do I persuade my colleagues who are already active on social media to work to the strategy that I give them?
I think I'd probably just answered that in a way, in that, as I said, social media is ubiquitous these days, or pretty much ubiquitous, but it is rather random, and it's not something that people necessarily take seriously. I think what you need to do is persuade them that it is a viable route to market. It is a viable way of achieving brand recognition, growing your brand. It's a viable way of getting sales leads, and there is the data to prove it. If you want some, please get in touch with me afterwards, because we have plenty. And once people realize that it is actually viable and worthwhile, they will then begin to understand that they need to have a strategy, because they will know through their own personal experience that their activities have been not necessarily useless, but they've been just a bit random and off the wall and whatever takes their mind.
We've seen some resistance in the past, haven't we, from some teams where, you know, there's just no appetite for promoting for their companies that they work for, becoming advocates for their companies. And how do you view that? Do you think recruitment looks favourably on people?
Yeah. Well, there was one company where we put a survey into this many years ago into their magazine, which is a print magazine, and said, asking people who use Twitter, and much to the CEO's surprise, at least 25% of his workforce, which numbers many thousand, were tweeting, I think it was 4 times a day at least, and he nearly fell off his chair. And so out of that came a nice social media strategy. Very nice.
And it's fair to say as well, isn't it, that employers seeking out new candidates would look favourably at people who position themselves as advocates for their previous employer, or influencers for their industry and their company. Not every role warrants perpetual use of LinkedIn, but certainly within professional services that we see, and also lots of B2B businesses, there's room, isn't there, for everyone on those platforms to become advocates for their companies.
Yeah, there was a large engineering company we look after who deal with one particular client in the Midlands, and at any moment in time, they probably had 100 people, probably more actually, on site in the particular factory in Derby, and working on different engineering tasks that they were supplying. And they might be there for a few months. So if you wanted to reach that engineering company in Derby, the way to do it was through the people who were working there, because they're all on Twitter all the time, and Facebook and so forth, and they got to know their peers, their colleagues in the engineering company very well. So how do you communicate with that company? Well, you make sure that those 100 plus people, engineers working there, know what the strategy is, understand it, know why it exists, and then they will be sure to, when they engage with their colleagues in the engineering company, to reflect that strategy and to say the right things. And so in that respect, it was a very powerful form of communication for them. And it ensured they got onto the tender list when it came round, for the next large chunk of work.
Yeah. We've got a couple of interesting questions here. One that alludes to tools. I think we're going to cover tools in some detail, aren't we, in a couple of weeks. But you mentioned social media analytics dashboard to track KPIs across channels. Can you recommend one to use? this person uses Hootsuite to schedule and publish content. A dashboard that includes metrics would be helpful.
Yeah, so maybe I can answer that. So the most basic sort of analytics tool that people can use that is free. It does require a little bit of setup in terms of social media, but the most basic is Google Analytics. I guess you can use your website Google Analytics on your website to find out what are the sources of your traffic, and that will give you sort of breakdown on different social medias. However, there are much more advanced tools. A lot of them do cost. You mentioned they use Hootsuite to schedule in post and content. So Hootsuite got another section called Hootsuite Analytics that is in the paid version, and you'll be able to connect your Instagram, LinkedIn, and all your different social medias into one place, and you'll be able to set up a kind of customizable dashboard to find out what's the status of your social media at any given time and run some reports. We had another question that is quite related to it. So I don't know if you know Hootsuite, but it's one of many tools that help you schedule and post and content on social media. So they asked if we recommend one of these tools, and they said that historically, from their experience, organic posting is better than automation. Organic posting meaning going directly to Facebook, uploading the content, then going to LinkedIn, upload the content there. So at times, sometimes it would work better. You can kind of adjust more of the settings a little bit more. But when you work on a campaign work and you think ahead, we highly recommend using scheduling. And actually, many of these tools like Hootsuite and the others have been, they're working relentlessly to just trying to get this integration the best they can. So there are every update that Facebook does, they would go ahead and trying to update their platform to accommodate the different features.
It's got an interesting point. It goes back to the importance of strategy, isn't it? Where you have to leave the requisite amount of margin to have an organic response to your customer base. You need to be ready to, perhaps as the part of your campaign work is sharing third-party content or things that are related to the topics that you're covering. So you need to be able to do that quite dynamically and responsively when you see some change in the marketplace or in your industry. You want to be able to share it. And that's important to factor that in as part of your scheduling routine, some space and some fluid areas to be able to post. But in terms of planning ahead and scheduling campaign activity, I've yet to find a better way than scheduling to, and at least the intention of automation, even if it requires a final human eye to press the button. Some good editing workflow. Scheduling is really the way forward to afford yourselves the right amount of time needed to plan and prepare.
The time you will save on scheduling will give you the opportunity to work on engagement, which is more important than actually the post or the way that the post is being published. So we really recommend it. We had another question. I think it's a classic one. What is more important, followers or engagement?
Well, I can give a quick overview. Always go for engagement. It's easy to buy followers. They send them something funny or dangerous or sexy or whatever it is, and you've got followers. Anybody can get followers, but engagement is a different thing altogether. And your followers are of no value if they're the wrong people or if they're not reading your posts. So you have to go for the engagement. Don't know if you want to add to that, Gil and Ben.
Yeah, I would say followers is an indicator really that you've got your strategy and your engagement right. It's a byproduct really of all of this effort that we're talking about. It's nice to see that increase because you've done all the right things. Much nicer, I should add, than if you've spent a lot of money on short run campaigns just to boost your followership. And as Mark said, there's good followers and there's poor followers. But we've had a few projects where we've seen the trend of followers increase, and because of all the good work that we've done. That's great. That's fantastic. That's a great byproduct. But it's no surprise that followers is only one metric as part of engagement rate. So engagement rate really takes, say, post frequency, and it puts it in a formula against, number of likes, number of shares, etc., follower increased trends, etc. So, it's only one part of a much bigger thing, and that's engagement.
Yeah, I agree. And I think circling back to what I said earlier about picking your social media platforms, I think a lot of people chase many followers in many different platforms, and that can be relentless at times. So if you were just to pick the focused social media accounts that you are using, and then even disable the ones that you don't. Many successful companies now just focus on one social media. So I'm not saying it's good to just do that, but don't open an account with all the different social medias available and then expect to have many followers on all of them, because the time you'll spend creating this engagement on each one of these networks might be all you do, instead of focusing on other things. So that's a very important point to think about. We have another question. Could you suggest some tips on increasing engagement, specifically on Instagram?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, everybody wants to be an Instagram star.
Well, it's a great platform, isn't it, for influencers in both sort of entertainment and lifestyle markets. And but Instagram's great, and actually emerging as a channel, as yet untapped channel for other types of industries. But it's true to say that the key to winning well on Instagram is consistency. You've got to have a good habit of frequency of posting on Instagram. Video is big on Instagram. If you can integrate video into what you're doing, fantastic. This all comes from the assumption that what you have to share on Instagram is correct for Instagram. Not every business is well suited, as we've sort of alluded to there. So, but if you have, obviously an image-rich set of communications, lots of activity, eventing, lots of other rich media such as video or webinars like this or podcasts, all of that is really good and carries well on Instagram. I would say that you need to seek out good examples, and we'll provide some in the upcoming webinars of what constitutes a good post. Make sure that you're using hashtags correctly. Make sure that you're engaging on trending topics with hashtags correctly, and linking out as well, as we've talked about the social media sales funnel and other content. Make sure you're linking out to other content from Instagram, so that you are giving your followers something more to consider just than pretty pictures. It's really about taking all of the available capabilities of any social media channel and maximizing them.
Yeah, and one difference between Instagram and other social medias is that the ability to share a post, like in Facebook, doesn't quite exist in Instagram. So I think the engagement should be more focused on commenting and replying and creating discussions under your pictures. You can share some stories, and there are options to forward pictures and posts that you've made on your Instagram, but it's not quite the same as the other networks. So yeah, it's very important to comment, go to other people's influencers or other people with high amount of followers and engagement, and comment to them, get the discussion going. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
Okay. I've got one more question, and it's quite generic, general question. So Mark, to your point about inbound marketing, so is direct marketing gone? And should businesses focus on inbound marketing?
It's not gone. It has its place, but it's certainly on the run at the moment, I would say. I mean, hey, I'm a fellow of the Institute of Direct Marketing, so it's quite close to my heart. The value of direct marketing is that has traditionally been that you avoid, it's a route to market, you avoid the retail or other types of methods of selling your product. And that is no longer really the case with the e-commerce that's available. So, if you take a market like Amazon, it's doing direct marketing, but it's managed to create such a big marketplace that it's more inbound marketing, because people go there looking for what they want rather than being broadcast to. So the whole thing is kind of flipped around. It still exists, but I would say it's direct marketing is as a name has gone. And in fact, the Institute of Direct Marketing is now known as became the Institute of Digital Marketing, and we've now changed our name again. So,
What's the new name?
I was just trying to think of it. Actually, we only changed it a couple of weeks ago.
They didn't send a membership card yet.
I haven't got it yet. No.
Okay.
So yeah, thanks to everyone who's joined today. We're going to hopefully see you again in the coming weeks, and a reminder that this webinar and as a presentation and video will be available for you on our website in the next few days.
And we're Marcom. We look after companies on a strategic level and on a tactical level. So we're available to help with your strategies. And you can see them on this image in front of you in the round ring around the picture. And then we work tactically in the areas you can see inside. So there's online and offline. There's still some of that going on. Not a lot, to be honest, but it does happen. So we build websites, run digital marketing campaigns, social media, etc. If you'd like to talk more about any of these or about what you've heard today, and if you've got further questions, let's meet. We'd love to hear from you. We've got various points of contact there, and please do get in touch with us. And otherwise, we look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.